Before the final match of the season, the CEO of Milan, CEO Furlani, came out and made a statement in which he unequivocally said that during the summer transfer window, sacrifices will not be made. Seeing that statement, I put this tweet out. I felt that Theo Hernandez is set to leave, Rafael Leao might go, Tijani Reinders would only go for a big offer, and if he did leave, Leao would probably stay. Under that tweet, there was a comment. This comment, a more doom and gloom one. Theo leaving, Mike leaving, Pulisic leaving, Reinders, Tomori, everyone out of the club. Seeing that comment, I felt that, oh, you know what? Look at me being all reasonable, and this person seems to be a little bit irrational. But seeing how things have turned out, I feel like this person was onto something. And that's what we're going to talk about in today's video. And on the flip side, some potential incoming profiles that we're going to have to talk about. Names like Dusan Vlahovic, Andrea Cambiaso, Federico Chiesa, and the latest one, Mateo Retegui. What are the chances of these players joining the club? We're gonna have to look at in today's episode of Rumor or Real. Now, as I talked about in the previous video, early on when Allegri had just joined, there were reports saying that he wanted to keep Mike, he wanted him to be the leader, and then within 24 to 48 hours, different news started to trickle in that he's actually going to be leaving. There were reports of a potential offer coming in from Chelsea. The initial quoted amount was about 25 million euros, but the part that, you know, I sort of want to talk about and see is what actually happened. How is it that suddenly a player that the new coach wanted, the player that put out a post on, you know, regularly on social media, you know, calling themselves a captain, wanting to work for the future of the club, what suddenly breaks down that makes them say, hey, you know what, I'm out of here, I want to go to Chelsea? Because that is what the latest reports are saying. The latest report is suggesting not some offer that has come for Mike, or, you know, some negotiation Milan is having with Chelsea. The latest report is that Mike has told the club to accept the latest offer from Chelsea because he wants to go. He wants to leave Milan. First of all, we're going to have to parse through and see if this is even true. None of the major Italian journalists are coming out and unequivocally saying that Mike wants this move. Some of what is coming out that Mike is demanding the club and telling them, hey, accept the next offer that comes in, which he doesn't really have the authority to say anyways, but that is what is being reported, is actually coming out more from journalists in England. And I think that's kind of what we have to look at with Maignan right now. Mike joined the club in 2021. Donnarumma left, Maignan came in. The first season, Milan won a Serie A title. The second season, they made a deep run into the Champions League semifinals. The third season, the second half of the third season is where, you know, news reports about his potential renewal actually started to float around more. Mike's current salary is a gross payment from Milan of 3.66 million. And a net payment that goes to Mike of 2.8 million. Keep in mind, these are some of the players that have gotten paid more than Mike. Rafael Leao, probably deservedly so. Alvaro Morata, who stayed here for a mere few months. Tammy Abraham, 4.5 million. Benacer, 4 million. Chukwueze was given a salary of 4 million. Theo, Loftus-Cheek, Divock Origi, who's been sitting on the bench for about a year and a half, 4 million. Pulisic, deservedly so, Fikayo Tomori, Alessandro Florenzi, and Yusuf Fofana. So there's a lot of players in there like Florenzi, like Origi, like Loftus-Cheek, Chukwueze, who haven't really done too much for the club, and they have been given a higher wage package than what Mike has been given. So if we go into the negotiations that Mike has gone through with the club, so the initial offer, it is being said, was sometime around February 2024. Milan reportedly offered a contract of 5 million net per season, so he's about 2.8 right now, and Milan offered 5 million in February 2024. That would have aligned his salary pretty much with Rafael Leao, who makes about 5 million in net as well. But it is reported that naturally Maignan rejected that offer, and reportedly he was demanding, or his entourage was demanding, 8 million per season. This has been reported by Sempre Milan, Tutto Mercato Web, and even Milan Zone had an article about that. Then it is reported that soon after, Milan, seeing his rejection, decided to, you know, up their offer that they were making to him, and it was an offer approximately 6 million per season, including bonuses, to bridge the gap between the initial proposal and Maignan's demands. Again, this was reported by Tutto Mercato Web, and it was reported by Sempre Milan. Now, after that, things sort of slowed down, but things again picked back up. There was advanced negotiations late into 2024, early 2025. Now, it's said that by late 2024, talks progressed significantly, with reports indicating a verbal agreement for a contract extension until 2028 or 2029. So there reportedly was a verbal agreement for a contract till 2028 or 2029. The agreed salary was around 5 million net per season, plus bonuses that could push the total to 6 to 7 million annually. That brings the amount much closer to the 8 million that was being reported that initially Mike's entourage had demanded. And this deal, as it said, would have made Maignan one of the highest paid players in the squad. Good, everything seems to be going fairly well. But that's where things start to seem to get more complicated and why we might be where we are today. So the verbal agreement was sometime around late 2024, early 2025. But in April of 2025, Milan reportedly presented a reduced offer of 4.5 million net per season until 2028. If all of this news is accurate, that's a problem. If you have a verbal agreement, sure, it's not a written agreement, you haven't signed off on it, but if you have a verbal agreement that you're going to do that, then going back at it in April and saying, hey, you know what, actually 4.5 million is what we're going to give you, that's going to make any person lose their faith and trust in you. And, it would just turn somebody off and say, hey, you know what? We had a verbal agreement early on. Now you're reneging on that. It said that, Milan did make this reduction reflecting on concerns about Maignan's inconsistent performances and the club's financial situation, particularly after missing Champions League qualification. Again, as I said, we'd have to be careful about how much of it we're believing and how much of it is actually accurate, but this is the pretty much the chronology with sources as to how these negotiations were coming through. Now, the interesting part about this whole situation is that, reports have come out just a little while ago of Nicolo Schira coming out and tweeting that Max Allegri wants Maignan to stay with the club. And quite honestly, to me, that is very telling. Now, who's talking to Nicolo Schira, who's one of the top journalists in Italy? Is it Max himself? Is it someone from his entourage? The curious part is that this little bit of news is coming out that sort of, I guess the coach is saying at least that, hey, I'm not involved in this. I don't want the guy to leave. I want him to stay. I want to coach this guy. I want him to be one of the leaders in this team. And so for that reason, I think the biggest question mark that can be put at this point in time has to be on the management. Sure, the Theo Hernandez sale is happening the way it's happening. It seemed like to everybody that player was going to get sold. But why is Mike getting moved? Why is Reinders getting sold? And why are you coming out and said that sacrifices won't be made? Or what do you actually mean when you use the word sacrifice? Is it just clever wordplay and still be able to do what you want to do at the end of it? Or is there a certain meaning behind it? I think there has to be more accountability from the management to actually step out and explain what these moves are for. And I think we have to keep in mind, and this is a question that I pose to all of you guys, that if Mike is let go of, but if Roma's goalkeeper Svilar is brought in, or a top quality goalkeeper who maybe is 26 years old is brought in, is then the Mike sale okay for you? Because for me, I'm not desperate about Mike staying the way I am about, Reinders should be held on to. I just don't like, if these reports are to be believed, I just don't like that sort of negotiating method where you give a verbal to a player on a certain salary and then, a little while later you renege on that and say, hey, you know what, we're actually going to offer you less. And at this point in time, it's actually not even quite clear if Mike would even leave. With this comment about Max Allegri coming out, even reports coming out that Chelsea actually values Mike at about 10 million. And that's what the initial conversation was about. Milan wants somewhere around that 30 million mark. The guy only has 1 year left on his contract. So will this sale even come through? Is it going to come through at an amount that the club wants? That's a big question mark. For me, I'm going to stamp this as possible. I think the reports and everything, they're definitely real. But when it comes to the potential of Mike leaving, yeah, I think it can happen. If Milan can let go of Theo Hernandez and Tijani Reinders in the same window, then as this person tweeted out, all these guys are going to be leaving. Why not Mike as well? And we'll jump into some potential incoming players and profiles we're going to be looking at. There's not a lot of reporting, not a lot of in-depth reporting, but there are links being made to these players. Dusan Vlahovic is the first one. His time at Juventus has been a very interesting one. He kicked off, he was one of the most sought after striker while he was playing at Fiorentina. Somehow Juventus managed to sign this player for 70 million euros. Well, Juventus is one of the top clubs, but still it's a big price tag and they were the ones who were able to get this player. Things started off well. In his first season, he had about 24 goals. It was split between Fiorentina and Juventus, but he did score 24 goals that season. The season after that, there was, a little bit more adjustment that Vlahovic had to make. He didn't score as many goals. The one after that, there was a lot of criticism amongst Juventus fans about the player, but he somehow still managed to to get the best, I think, the striker of the year award, and after the season was over. It's his performances from last season that I think made most Juventus fans completely give up on him. A lot of people felt that, okay, maybe the Thiago Motta arrival would help this player. Under Max Allegri, it was a different system. Maybe it wasn't, allowing Vlahovic to be able to score as many goals as he could, but Thiago Motta's system might help that. It was actually one of his worst seasons last year. And the fact that he's now also entering the final year of his contract, it has completely devalued the player, and it seems like Juventus and their fans are just ready to move on from Vlahovic. So what are the chances of him making a move to Milan? I mean, the fact that Max Allegri is the coach that he actually played slightly better football under might help that. He is in the final year of his contract. Clearly, Juventus wants to offload him. In the past, he has talked about how he idolized growing up. He idolized Zlatan Ibrahimovic. He would get to play in an organization that, has Ibrahimovic involved. This so brings about a little bit of an emotional component. He still stays in Serie A. He doesn't move away from a league that he's understood by playing with Fiorentina and then playing with Juventus. And then also the fact that Milan is playing a game a week. I'm not sure if that's actually going to help him, because if Santi Gimenez and Vlahovic both are at Milan, you would assume that they both would be fighting for playing time. There's not a UEFA Champions League to play for. The other player gets rest. The other player plays in the other tournament. No, it's just going to be one game a week. So it is a team that doesn't necessarily guarantee him a starting spot. He would be competing with Santi, but the fact that he has played under Allegri and Allegri still hasn't seen how Santi Gimenez actually plays, maybe he would favor a player that he's known from the past. The possibility of Vlahovic moving to Milan, at this point in time, I'm gonna stamp this as unlikely. I wonder what he's gonna sell for. And the fact that Milan just signed Santi Gimenez, I know they want another striker, but the fact that Gimenez was so choppy in after he joined, they probably want a bit more of a sure bet. And none of the top journalists in Italy even seem to be confirming this. We'll quickly skim through the possibility of Federico Chiesa coming to Milan. I already talked about this story 2 days ago. I would want to note this. Most of the media is talking about it today, but there was one journalist that I noticed 2 days ago who talked about this, and that's when I made the video. And now suddenly today, all the media seems to be talking about the possibility of Federico Chiesa making a move to Liverpool to Milan. Now, what is being said is that he's open to the idea of a move to Milan. He's also open to the idea of making a move back in general to Serie A. He even said, I wouldn't close the door on the possibility of moving to Juventus. I think he was asked by a journalist about, how Max is coming to Milan, and he mentioned that, he liked playing under him, and he wouldn't mind that for the future either. Now, the reports are saying that there's actually a verbal between the club and Chiesa. The negotiation now has to happen between Milan and Liverpool. Pretty much the same news that we talked about a couple of days ago. Not much to add there, but it's just becoming much more mainstream, which tells you that, okay, maybe there's even more truth to it than what we felt a couple of days ago. So at this point in time, I'm going to stamp this as, I'm going to call this as possible. I think it can happen. Milan's probably going to be looking for a backup player for both the wings. He's versatile. He plays on both sides. He fills that Italian quota that you have to have. He has experience playing in Serie A. So yeah, I think it's possible. The one that I'm not so sure about is Mateo Retegui to Milan. I mean, this one is a surprising one. I have to be honest. It is a news report that has been broken by Gianluca Di Marzio. I think we have to be fair when we say this. A few seasons ago, this was the go-to source. If Di Marzio said something, you knew it was very much going to happen. But since then, there have been a little bit more speculative reports that I notice come every summer from this particular side. So this one's a little bit more surprising. This player is valued pretty highly. And even if you look at the details, you look at the finer details. So first of all, he had an excellent season last season. He was the best striker, the best goal scorer in the league. He got that award, part of the team of the season. So when it comes to his talent and his quality, making a move from, I think, Serie B to Genoa, then making a move to Atalanta, where, so many young players go and prosper, he did the job that he was asked to do. So in terms of his quality, this would be a solid pickup for the club. Now, the finer details are a little bit more complicated. He has a contract till 2028, so you're going to have to pay a serious amount of money to get this player. Milan just signed Santi Gimenez for, 35 million euros. Are they really going to spend 45 on another striker? That's really hard to say. The fact that Atalanta have a contract with him till 2028 means they want the best amount, the best offer. Other Serie A clubs are also interested in this player. Juventus is said to be linked to this player as well. So I think with Retegui, when you start to look at the finer details, you really start to wonder, not from a talent standpoint, you know he's good, but from a negotiation standpoint of this, if this is the profile that Milan's going to spend their biggest amount on, I mean, 45 million would be one of the highest transfers in the history of the club, if not arguably the highest transfer in the history of the club. Are they going to do that in a season when just 6 months ago they spent money on Santi Jimenez? Is that money going to go after losing a left back, a central midfielder, potentially a goalkeeper, towards a striker that you just invested in a few months ago? For that reason, at this point in time, I'm going to call this report, I'm going to stamp this as unlikely. I don't want to call it a rumor and just completely disrespect Di Marzio's reporting, but I think it's unlikely. Just seeing the semantics and the details of it, not sure if Milan's going to be spending 45 million on a player right now in the striker position. But things could change if there's a potential sale of Rafael Leao. This is also another player that is being rumored, or, there are reports coming out of a potential exit. It seems to be a little bit more legitimate than what we're seeing for Retegui. Just the likelihood and the possibility of it happening seem fairly low in my opinion. I don't know what Allegri's word actually means. He did say there were reports that he wanted to keep Mike, build around him, want him to be the leader. Now we're seeing how Maignan's situation is going. It was also being said that he looks at Rafael Leao as a centerpiece to his project of AC Milan. So will Leao be leaving now too? What we do know is that his performance last season were not up to his own standard. I think we have to keep in mind that this is a player that has set such a high standard that even in a season where he makes 50 appearances and has 25 goal contributions, we just say he had a bad season. Pulisic at the same time had 50 games and 29 goal contributions, and we say it was a good season. But Leao, just 4 goal contributions short, is considered a bad season. Not an okay, not a passable, but a bad season. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. A player like Rafael Leao's quality and talent in 50 games should probably be getting about 30, 35 goal contributions for sure. But does that mean that Milan would be open to selling the player? He has a contract till 2028. He has a release clause of 175 million euros. Will they actually walk away from this player? The latest report from Nicolo Schida suggests that Bayern Munich, the club that is the only club really that has been truly linked to Leao, is willing to offer an initial bid of 60 million euros plus a player profile. Which player, we don't know for sure, but 60 million euros plus a player. Seeing how Milan reacted to Atletico Madrid's offer of a swap of players with Theo Hernandez, it tells me that Milan's not really open to getting any player unless that player is part of their scouting system. And the report also suggests that unless there's an offer of 100 million euros, it's unlikely that Milan would sell Rafael Leao. And let's be real, when any club gets an offer of 100 million euros, you do have to consider that sale. But for now, with the report coming out about Bayern Munich, about 60 million euros plus a player, I'm going to stamp this as unlikely. I don't think it's a rumor. I think this is very much real. Bayern is interested in Rafa, but does he actually make a move away? I don't think he does, not based on these numbers that I'm seeing. So I'm going to stamp this as unlikely for now. And there you have it, Milanisti. Those are the profiles we wanted to look at today. I can't really say too much about Rangers. It seems like that deal is progressing. It's pretty much going to happen at this point in time. I think we all know it's going to happen. We'll react to that a little bit later. But when it comes to the outgoing profiles, yes, it is concerning as to what's happening with the project that Milan has built over the past few years. Theo seemingly on his way out, with Mike potentially on his way out, Milan entertaining offers for Rafael Leao. How do you see the future of this club? Make sure to let me know in the comment section. And from my side, as always, Forza Milan. Grazie mille. Ciao tutti. Did you know Benito Mussolini put an end to the existence of Inter Milan? And the only reason why AC Milan is called what it is because of the fascist leader? What led to the breakup of AC Milan and Inter Milan in that restaurant behind the Duomo is fascinating in itself. But what is even more fascinating